Hey, welcome back. It's the Scaling Secrets podcast. Patricia Recarte is here from Kado Networks.com. They have an AI driven enterprise networking software that helps businesses build meaningful relationships that turn into deals. They have this way for you to share your digital business card and a QR code, but Patricia and her company have been through quite a journey that we can learn a lot from as far as the pivots and the ups and the downs and the scaling and the reconfiguring. So Patricia is going to tell us what she's all about, what we can find out from her, and what we can learn and pick up. And we all make mistakes. Mistakes are good. We should look for mistakes and solve those problems, but hopefully you make slightly less mistakes than if you didn't hear from Patricia and her amazing story, which we're about to hear. So Patricia, glad to be speaking with you.
Well, hi, Robert. Thanks a lot for having me on board today. And hi, everyone, and thanks for listening. So, yeah, I'm Patricia. I'm one of the co founders of Kado. So, in a nutshell, Kado is a digital business card and relationship management solution. So, the idea came about when I was back in investment banking. So, pre COVID times, as an investment banker and basically in any type of client facing business, you have to do a lot of networking, go to a bunch of networking events, lots of client meetings. And obviously, it was quite an efficient, not only just the entire, like paper business cards process, because at the end of the day, paper business cards, are about to disappear, but just the fact of, going back to the office, having to type in everything manually into your CRM or database. Well, surprisingly, even at Morgan Stanley, where I'm from, we didn't even have a CRM. So our CRM was actually an Excel spreadsheet, which actually happens in a lot of banks. So, having to follow up with potential clients or customers right after, the events, the meetings, it involved a lot of just like manual tasks. So with Caro, beyond just building, as I was saying, a digital business card solution, we also wanted to integrate um, client management or customer relationship management features, even if they were very basic. So after you share your digital business card with someone and they revert back their details to you, obviously it integrates with your CRM if you do have one, but you're also able to add tasks on the go, add notes on the platform. It integrates with your email and calendar so you can view your emails and meetings that you had with a particular person. And now we're also starting to implement some sort of social feed that I'd like to call. So you're able to view the LinkedIn's profile of the person, and hopefully at some point also their latest tweets or if they appear on the news. But basically, the summary is that we wanted to go a little bit beyond digital business cards to create a little bit, something or a solution that was a little bit more 360 and not just a business card per se. Now, going back to our initial periods and when we launched the product, so we started fundraising as well. We had a nice pre-seed round of 1.2 million total in a safe. But obviously, as you very well mentioned, Robert, at the beginning, we did make several mistakes that I wish I knew as of today, that basically I should have done things differently. But there, well, a couple of things that we did. The first one was that, believe it or not, um, many companies are not yet ready for a full transition into like a digital business card solution. So we were creating a product that maybe was a little bit too complex or that tried to have way too many features at the very beginning rather than starting with something that was a lot more like simplistic, right? And or basically that just had the very basic features that a company would need. So, for example, all the integrations, with the email and calendar, etc., were a little bit unnecessary. And whenever you spoke to a potential customer, they will tell you, to be honest, the only thing that we want, because our workforce maybe is not as young. We have lots of salespeople that are on their 40s, 50s, and we don't want to implement something that is way too complicated. We only want a QR code by which they can share their contact information, and that's it. So the first mistake was that we try to go way too fast in terms of development or try to go way too deep in terms of features that we offered, when the reality was that many companies just wanted something that was a lot more simple. Then we also started hiring very senior people way too early, I guess, in our product story. So obviously, when you are at a very early stage, a lot more work, should rely on the founders, which obviously we did. But because myself and my co-founder were Spanish and we're actually targeting the US market, we believed like, okay, maybe we should surround ourselves with, like a top tier sales guy and a top tier marketing guy. But the reality is that at the very beginning, the only thing that you're really going to do is basically it's going to require a lot of investment and very little return, because these very senior people are used to dealing with very large budgets, both for marketing or for hiring a team under them. So whenever you tell them like, okay, your budget it's actually like a tenth that what you used to have in your prior corporation, they actually find a lot more difficulties because they're not used again to dealing with such limited resources. Sorry. So that obviously led us to having a huge amount of costs and not really getting to the revenue targets that we had initially. So that's when we actually had to pivot, as you well mentioned at the beginning of the episode. So at that point in time, that was actually beginning of 2023, where we were supposed to raise our next round. And my co-founder and I, we basically sat down one day and talked it through and said like, okay, what do we do? Like, do we just close and say goodbye? At the end of the day, I don't know if it's like 95 to 99% startups fail. So do we just join that 95%, or do we try to fight to be one of the 1 to 5% of the remaining startups? So we decided to push along and to try to recover what was left of the company. So we had a team of like 12 at the time, and unfortunately we had to let everyone go, and we went back to as I was in like a garage mode. So him and I again sitting down and dealing with well, the entire situation that we had basically run out of money, and we had to get the startup back at it and running again. So there are many things that I guess we have been doing differently since then. And the good thing is that since the beginning of 2023 we haven't fundraised again, and we've basically been running on our own funds, which, I mean, to be honest, is quite a good thing to say whenever you're a tech entrepreneur, knowing that you're not on the risk of running out of money the following month. But obviously that required a lot of sacrifices and I guess lessons, right, that we had to learn. And some of them were I guess I'll start with trying to find niche markets. So whenever you're launching a new company, a new product, one of the mistakes that a lot of people can actually make is trying to go to a broader or to the broadest public possible, when the reality is that sometimes it's just smarter to start with niche and smaller markets. So we did several analysis, even around digital business cards in different languages in different countries, because the US market is true that it was getting saturated. And we found out that in Europe, for example, in localized languages and specific countries, if you compare with the US market, where maybe the keyword difficulty for digital business cards is like a 57, if you translated that to Italian and looked for it in Italy, it was a keyword difficulty of 7. So the same thing happened with Germany and with Spain and with France. Actually, when you went into very local markets and you sort of like went away from the English language, you realized you had a bunch of niche markets that maybe each market per se is smaller, but the fact that you basically had no competition. And whenever you summed up all those different smaller markets, it actually, turned into a larger market potential than what we actually had in the United States. So that was one of like actually the big wins that we had throughout last year. Again, sort of like pivoting in terms of, okay, what's going to be our market, or our target market, on what languages are we going to focus. So that was the first one. And then relying a lot more on the organic and member get member types of growth. So it is true that prior to our little big hiccup, we were relying a lot on this, senior marketing person, on sales or revenue that came from the salesperson, rather than actually relying on our internal organic growth, and basically building an internal growth machine. So especially when you have a product that is so client facing like ours, it should be a lot easier, to drive additional organic signups or additional organic growth, versus a tool that maybe you have behind your desktop and nobody sees. Because at the end of the day, if it's a digital business card, you are sharing it with other people. So our end customer ends up becoming, our biggest marketing asset. So we made a strong investment in acquiring new users and new customers via our own end users. So the we established, or we implemented internal, rewards for our customers. So if they bring X people along, then they obviously get, well, X amount of dollars or discounts depending on the people that they brought in. So having some sort of I don't want to call it like influencer, but we also, reached out to certain like influencers or people that were, like strong networkers, and did a lot of videos around, networking, etc., for them to also use the Kado application whenever they were, recording videos about tools to get more organic growth from that end. So again, relying a lot more on the organic channels versus the sales dependent revenue, which obviously, if you lose a salesperson, then suddenly your revenue drops. That shouldn't be the case. You should still have a machine that continues working if you don't have a person doing a manual outreach or email marketing to potential customers. So that was the second one. And the third item that we also invested in, and we changed quite a lot, was obviously cost control. Was pretty important, right? Especially as we had to grow again with practically no means or no resources. So within cost control, we had to do a very deep analysis, which again, I wish we had done at the very beginning, but it sort of like came after. Right at the end of the day, the best way to learn is by making mistakes, but I wish we hadn't make them before. And one of the things that we actually did was I'm gonna call I'm gonna call this way like micro testing. So we basically had small amounts of investment made across different channels. So even if it's like Google Ads, and we did a small investment in Google Ads Germany in English, another small investment in, for example, Google Ads Germany in German. So as I was talking before, trying to target as well different countries, both in English and in local languages. Then instead of depending that much on email marketing, we realized that our conversions via email, pure email marketing, weren't that high. However, when we combined them with LinkedIn, so we started using tools that combined both LinkedIn and Twitter and sales, rather than having email versus Twitter versus LinkedIn as independent channels. We started bringing them all together, also as a way to maximize our conversions. But again, doing this micro tests actually really helped us understand what was converting, what not, what channels were the best, what type of wording or images and of content resonated best with our audience. And the reality is that we didn't have to invest that much in order to test and know what was working. And once we knew what keys to press on, that's where we when we started, investing a lot more in these specific channels. So right now, for example, in our Google Ads or in our search ads, I believe the for B2B SaaS, the market average of like click through rate is like 5-6%. We have a 15 to 20% on our Google Ads campaigns. So again, that was all thanks to the micro testing and basically iterating on Google Ads every single week. So that was also a, even though, I mean, I know many of these things can sound obvious, but sometimes they're not until you again make that mistake and stop and sort of like go back on your steps and restart all this different tests and strategies from ground zero. So yeah, again, micro testing was a big win for us. Again, not relying that much on external hires, uh, working a lot more on our organic growth. And I guess the last thing maybe to mention was reconsider what type of tools, or sorry, what type of features we wanted to really highlight or to have on our product. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we try to go very deep in terms of product functionality, when the user really wanted something a lot more simple, and a tool that just had like ABC rather than A to Z. So we actually shut down many of the features that we had live just to focus on those that users were actually utilizing. So really looking internally at the metrics of what was being used and what wasn't. Um, and again, shutting down whatever wasn't really used. And whenever we launched a new feature, or we had a set of features that we could potentially launch or relaunch, really do a deep dive on, okay, what is the cost that this is going to require in terms of effort, not only of development, but also effort of marketing this new functionality and informing users and teaching them how to use this feature, versus what's the potential upgrade sorry uplift in revenue that this feature could actually bring us. As in, okay, is this feature really going to convert more free users into paying users? Is it really going to convert lower tier users into higher tier users? And obviously that required, well, first, a lot of it's just logical, right? It's just using your own, thought to understand, or to try to think what features your user base would be utilizing, but also launching a lots of, um, in-app polls, or utilizing our social media to also try to gather information about what users like or dislike about our app. What type of features do they really want, rather than just randomly throwing a new feature at them just because you believe it's going to be working. So again, communicating a lot with your customers, with your users, could potentially help you, grow and scale exponentially, versus the trial and error strategy, which was the one that we actually did, prior to the pivot. Um, but yeah, again, I would, I guess, mention those four as the main ones. And no, obviously, in terms of what is coming next for Kata, obviously we're still, looking for growth, and still to optimize our, what we said, what we call the internal organic growth machine. um, our main goal is to try to grow as much as we can without trying to depend on external investment. So still, growing with our own funds and investing smartly as we have been doing since 2023. So basically continuing with that path. And within our organic channels, we want to continue investing a lot more in the get member strategy. So trying to find other ways by which we can get people, to promote the app and get rewards, so that they spread the word voluntarily rather than trying to reach out to influencers, and then trying to implement better upgrade strategies. So, believe it or not, as of today, right now, you have to go to the web application in order to upgrade from a free to a paying plan. Because it's true that most of our users, create the account via the web app, but as of today, there's still a big bunch of our user base that just downloads the app, the free version, for a random networking event. So there is still some work that we need to do, to implement, like in-app purchases, even if that requires, or if that means that we have to give away 20-25%, whatever that is, to the app store. It is still an interesting way, right, to grow your revenue. And then, yeah, other than that, we're still focused on Europe, on those niche markets, because even if they are smaller compared to the US, they're still quite big, especially when you bring them all together. So again, still focusing in Europe, in promoting more get member strategies for revenue and organic growth. And from a product perspective, as we mentioned at the beginning, we still want to be more than a digital business card. However, we need to really choose what cards we play. So, one of the things we gathered actually from our user base is that rather than offering email integrations or calendar integrations, which many CRM tools do offer. Most of the users were interested in the news, what do we say, yeah, news integration, if you could call it that way. So if you meet someone at a particular networking event, well, basically being able to view the latest or live news around that person, that company, and so on, just so that we can give you very curated information about that particular person, and you can start a conversation rather on the spot instantly or afterwards whenever you follow up. But you can start a conversation that is curated and that is fed, with the latest available data on that person, on that company, um, from the from the internet. But yeah, I guess that is our story from the very beginnings, and the mistakes we made, and our key lessons learned, and yeah, I guess the big changes or the big things that we've changed since then, and how that has helped us grow.
Amazing. You've been up to so much. And as you said a few times, like a lot of what you've mentioned, it might seem obvious, but there's so many different aspects of a business that are important. It's easy to
Mhm.
neglect the fundamentals or not stay consistent on it. And how do you sort of manage your time or keep a structure with all this? Because you mentioned all these things, right? Like, well, how do we do the organic growth machine, or how do we remove the features or talk to the customers or add the polling? There's so much to do. So
Yeah.
how do you avoid the chaos, or have like a controlled chaos? How do you get to all these things and not drop the ball?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So, actually, well, do two main there are two main things that I tend to do with to organize my time. The first one is that every month I have this sort of like big board in the office with the key objectives per department, you could say. So, okay, in terms of marketing, what are like the big things that we want to do, or what are certain metrics that we want to hit, whether that is, web visits, or domain rating increase, or I don't know, like Google Ads conversions. We write down again the key metrics that we want to achieve and what are the key levers that we're going to pull. And once it's clear, sort of the big things that we want to achieve in that month, then I put that. Actually, I use this app called Motion, not Notion, not the one where you take notes. Is like a Motion, which is to organize your calendar. And I divide that into projects and sub projects, and I assign a specific time frame to each of the tasks. Like, okay, I need to work on the entire, I don't know, like customer outreach and polling, etc. Say I need to dedicate 12 hours to this project, and this is the deadline, and this is the priority. And based on your inputs, then it sort of like organizes automatically your calendar. So each day I have sort of like my calendar organized with specific time slot dedicated to each task and project. Obviously, there are certain things that are just like a repeat. Like every day, I need to dedicate, at least 30 to 1 hour to sales or follow-ups, client emails, etc. Then another maybe 30 minutes to 1 hour to other random emails that I need to follow up on. So those are like the basics. But then on top of that, my calendar gets built based on the priorities and times that I assigned in this sort of like tool, and based on the targets that I have for the month.
Very cool. So you use motion, and it seems like it's a lot of like looking at the big picture and then breaking it down
Yeah,
and then
into
figuring
tasks and
out then what
subtasks.
time will I do these things. Well,
Exactly.
great. And so we only have a few minutes left, but I want to make sure that you give so much cool stuff about your company and about the ups and downs. But in the last few minutes here, since this is the Scaling Secrets podcast, do you have like one final really good secret to scaling a business?
I mean, in our case, it's going to be that your biggest marketing asset. Obviously, it will depend on what type of business you have, but it you would be surprised at how it can actually be your customer. So sometimes you don't need to spend millions and millions and millions on marketing when you have your own customers to actually do the scaling and the growth and the actual marketing for you. So, what I would recommend many other companies that could be similar to ours is just to try to figure out, what types of member get member strategies or tools can actually work for them, because again, your customer is your it can be your biggest marketing asset.
That's a great idea. What are the get member strategies that I can implement, which might not reveal themselves immediately, right? It might require some
Exactly.
deep thinking, talking to your team, talking to your customers, thinking about this over many months and just figuring out a way to get
Hmm.
this to grow on its own the same way like Uber pushes like the coupon code.
Exactly.
Hotmail, they're famous for getting big because way back in the late 90s when you sent an email at the bottom it said, hey, we use Hotmail to send this message. And
Hmm.
so if we can apply that to our companies,
Yeah.
that's a really interesting way to get it to grow on its own. And it's just yet one more lever to pull. You do that, you do the selling, you do the AdWords, you
Hmm.
do the SEO and everything else, and you're on your way to creating a business
Yeah.
that runs on its own and is a monster as a machine. And so, what's the
Mm.
next step here? How do people find out about Kado, and what's the type of person that should be using it?
Well, obviously, if you want to learn more about Kado, feel free to, check our website, kadonetworks.com. So Kado networks.com. And Kado, at the end of the day, is for any person which basically has some sort of like client facing profession. So any person that feels that is, a big time networker that loves going to client meetings, going to networking events, or just needs to be out on the field. And again, we may think of, I don't know, sometimes whenever we talk about tech startups, we think that our clients are actually other tech startups. But in our case, for example, we sell a lot into pharmaceutical companies, real estate, automobilistic companies, energy. So again, even in the more traditional industries, there is still, or I guess it's where there is most client facing, more client facing activities, and where people still go a lot to networking events or to face client meetings. So yeah, if you're a big time networker or just have face to face encounters with your clients, whether that is an event or at an office, well, then Kado is a tool for you for sure.
Very nice, very inspiring. This is solving an important problem to be better with networking and better with follow up and better with just being organized in general.
Mm-hmm.
Kado Networks.com. And as we wrap up our conversation, you have all those cool books behind you. And even when you've talked about your story, I heard like different sorts of lessons. So, is there a favorite book or quote or lesson that you think has really helped you that you can pass along to us to, tell us where to go?
Well, I mean, I guess for me, and this is applicable to our own story, is that success is about resilience. So there's no straight path to success. It's all going to, well, you're going to encounter a bunch of highs and lows, and the highs are not always that high, but the lows are very low, especially in the startup world. So success is about resilience. Again, it doesn't matter how many times you fall, as long as you don't fall with the same stone, and as long as you stand up and you continue pushing and fighting for your dreams or ideas.
That's very helpful. Keep going, keep getting up. Success is not a straight line. And the next tool for you to use on this path to success to get that QR code, to do your networking, is to go to kadonetworks.com. That's Kado networks.com. And we have been speaking with Patricia Recarte from KadoNetworks.com. So go there, install the app, use it. You'll love it. And thank you, Patricia, for stopping by and giving us some amazing stories and life advice. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Robert, for having me on.
Wonderful.